My friend told me he's tired of playing with me after 3.5 years of inconsistency and proposing me every time, and I finally told him the truth. If I wanted you, I could have had you a long time ago. But I don't, and here's why. I'm 27 now, and like many of us navigating adulthood, I've had my fair share of unexpected connections. One of those connections was with someone I went to the same alma mater with. We weren't close during school, barely even knew each other then, but sometime after I had graduated, before he did, he found me on social media. I honestly don't even remember how the conversation started, but somehow it just flowed. We clicked as friends pretty naturally, and over time, we became close. It didn't take long for him to express that he liked me. It was early on, and to be fair, he was upfront about it. At the time, though, I had just gotten out of a long and serious relationship. One of those relationships that leaves you a little breathless, a little raw, and a little more guarded than you were before. I wasn't in a place where I wanted to jump into anything serious, or even casual, to be honest. I told him that, clearly and kindly. I've always tried to be as honest and intentional as possible when it comes to these things. I didn't want to mislead him or give him false hope. I told him I valued the friendship that was forming and didn't want to complicate things. Still, he stuck around. Not in an overbearing way, but he stayed in my life. He would text me funny things, send me memes, keep conversations going in a way that was light, consistent, and easy. He made me laugh. A lot. And there was something sweet and persistent about his energy. He wasn't exactly my type in the traditional sense. Not someone I would have normally gone for romantically, but there was something magnetic about his personality. I noticed that I enjoyed talking to him more than I expected. That contagious kind of laughter is rare, and I appreciated the joy it brought me, especially after coming out of something so emotionally heavy. Eventually, he asked me out on a proper date. At first, I hesitated. I went back and forth in my mind because I knew deep down that I still didn't feel that romantic spark. That gut instinct, the chemistry, the curiosity to lean closer, it just wasn't there. But at the same time, I didn't feel entirely closed off to the idea of giving it a shot. I mean, people always say sparks can grow, right? And we hadn't known each other that long. Maybe I was being too picky. Maybe I was protecting myself too much. So, I agreed. And you know what? We had a great time. He planned the evening thoughtfully, and the whole night was filled with laughter, like the kind of laughter that makes your cheeks hurt and your chest feel light. There was no awkwardness, no pressure. Just good energy and good vibes. But even as I was smiling and laughing with him across the table, something in me knew the truth. There was no spark. I don't mean that in a harsh or dismissive way. It wasn't that I didn't like him. I just didn't like him like that. And I realized something important that night. Sometimes someone being a good person, making you laugh, being attentive and kind, still isn't enough to create romantic chemistry. It's either there or it isn't. And forcing it out of guilt, curiosity, or hope only complicates things further. Fast forward some time. After that first date, I put some distance between us, not in a dramatic way, but just enough to recalibrate. I still didn't feel the spark, and I didn't want to string anyone along. But he remained present in my life, orbiting gently, never completely fading out. And after a while, I started wondering if maybe I had been unfair. Maybe I had written him off too quickly because he wasn't exactly my type, not just in terms of appearance, but personality too. I started asking myself if I had let superficial preferences get in the way of something potentially real. So one day, I offered to take him on a date. I figured if I was really going to give this a chance, it needed to be mutual. He had put in the effort before, and maybe now it was my turn. I wanted to show that I was open, that I was willing to explore the possibility, even if the feelings weren't completely there yet. We went out and, again, we had fun. He made me laugh the way he always did. The vibe was easy, familiar. But deep down, if I was honest with myself, that spark, the one that makes you want to reach across the table or lose track of time just looking at someone, it still wasn't there. But I didn't say that. Not then. I continued to tell him the same truth I had been saying since we first started talking back in 2021, that I wasn't ready for a relationship. And I truly wasn't. It wasn't just an excuse. I was still doing the work to heal, to rebuild myself after my last serious relationship. I was learning to be whole on my own again, and it felt good. But the reality was also that I wasn't just not ready. I also just didn't see him in that way. Still, I tried. I genuinely tried. And for a while, he did too, at least on the surface. He would bring me flowers, open doors, show up with a single rose like some scene out of a rom-com. He had these sweet, almost old-school gestures that felt sincere until they didn't. Because they weren't consistent. It was like he was courting the idea of me rather than who I really was. He would show up in a flurry of affection and then vanish back into himself again. The energy didn't last. And what made it even more confusing was that, throughout our friendship, he kept getting into committed relationships with other women. 2 different women, off and on, over the course of our friendship. Not at the same time, thank God, but still. Imagine being told someone likes you, that they've always liked you, that you're the one they're pursuing, and then watching them post pictures with someone else a few months later. Then break up. Then try to flirt with you again. Then disappear. Then repeat. I wasn't exactly hurt by it, surprisingly. Maybe because I had already known in my heart that I didn't feel the same way. But I was confused, more so by the mixed signals. He'd say he wanted me, but his actions didn't align. You can't claim you've been chasing someone for years while actively committing yourself to someone else. You can't say I'm the one that got away and then treat me like a placeholder. It just didn't add up. And yet I didn't hate him for it. I wasn't even angry. I think at some point I just accepted what it was. He was someone who cared about me in his way, but maybe not in the way I needed or deserved. He wasn't consistent. He wasn't emotionally clear. And truthfully, I wasn't in love with him. Not even close. I had already placed him in the friend category a long time ago. It just took me some time to stop feeling guilty for not being able to reciprocate what he said he felt. I've been single for almost 3.5 years now, and in all that time, my message has remained the same. I've communicated my boundaries and intentions clearly. I've stayed true to where I am emotionally. I don't play games, and I don't make promises I can't keep. If anything, I tried harder than I needed to see if this could be something, to give someone the benefit of the doubt, to make sure I wasn't rejecting love out of fear or habit. But it still wasn't there. And that's okay. Not every connection turns into romance. Sometimes, people come into your life to remind you of who you are, what you want, and what you don't. Sometimes they stay as friends. And sometimes they fade because the energy shifts and the path no longer aligns. Each time we talked about where I stood, romantically, I found myself getting more and more honest, not just with him, but with myself. What started as a general, I'm not ready for a relationship, slowly evolved into something more specific, more grounded in truth. It wasn't just that I wasn't ready, it was also that I didn't want a relationship with him. And that was something I had to grow into saying out loud. In the beginning, I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I tried to keep things light, to leave room for friendship, to not make it awkward. But as time went on, and as he kept circling back with the same questions, the same flirtations, the same hopeful tone, I realized that protecting his feelings at the expense of my honesty wasn't fair to either of us. I can't really call my reasons excuses. Because they weren't. I just didn't like him that way. And more recently, I've come to truly appreciate my singleness, not as a waiting room for a relationship, but as its own valid and fulfilling chapter. I have things I'm working on in life, goals I want to accomplish, patterns I'm still unlearning, healing I'm still doing. I want to arrive in my next relationship feeling whole and emotionally available, not scattered or half-present. I want to be able to enjoy dating from a grounded place, not a reactive one.
And right now,
I'm not there, and I'm okay with that. Anyway, fast forward again. Over the last year, he's continued with the "I've been wanting you" talk. Little messages here and there. The occasional "when are you going to be my girlfriend?" dropped into the conversation like a joke, but not really a joke. I honestly thought that by now, after everything we had talked about, especially the deep, heartfelt conversation we had in person last year, he'd understand where I stood. I thought I had finally been clear enough. In that conversation, I laid it all out. I told him that while I appreciated his feelings, I didn't see us as compatible. That I didn't want to be in a relationship right now, and even if I did, it wouldn't be with him. That wasn't said to be cruel, it was just the truth. I acknowledged that he liked me, that he was attracted to me, but I also shared what I'd come to realize. I'm not the woman he really wants. Not in the deeper, lifelong, soul-level kind of way. And I'm not going to pretend to be just because he's held onto an idea of me for this long. So now here we are, and we just had another conversation, this time over Instagram. He slid into my DMs again, same tone, same flirtation, like nothing had ever been said. And I don't know if it's that he forgot what I told him, or just didn't take it seriously. Maybe he thought if he waited long enough, I'd change my mind. Maybe he thought that time would soften me into saying yes. But I haven't changed my mind. I've only gotten clearer. The other day, he messaged me again, this time on Instagram. It always starts the same. A little joke, a playful flirtation that's laced with something deeper, something he probably hopes I'll finally respond to differently. This time he said, "Do I gotta hit the gym to make you my girlfriend? If not, what do I gotta do?" I paused for a second. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I've had this conversation in so many forms before. Still, every time he asks a variation of the same question, it feels like he's waiting for me to give a new answer. Like maybe this time, I'll say yes. So I kept it short.
Calm.
Measured. Nah, you saying anything. But good morning, though. I thought that would be enough to brush it off and move on. But then he replied, "I'm dead serious. I'm tired of playing with you." And that's when something in me shifted, not in frustration or anger, but in resolve. It hit me that he still doesn't get it. That no matter how much I've tried to communicate where I'm at, he's still operating from this place of hoping, pushing, maybe even convincing himself that I'm just playing hard to get. That this has all been a game. But I'm not playing. I never was. So I responded, not out of pettiness or cruelty, but because I needed to finally say it, clearly and completely. "I'm tired of you thinking I'm playing. If I wanted you, I could have had you a long time ago." And that's the truth. This isn't about timing or circumstances or bad luck. It's about choice. I've had the opportunity, and I chose not to take it. Not out of malice, but because it never felt right. You've been inconsistent from the beginning, and that's okay. However, on top of me not liking inconsistency in general, especially in dating, I've come to the full-on realization that I no longer want a relationship at this time. And I meant every word of that. Somewhere along the way, I stopped viewing singleness as a waiting room and started seeing it as the life I'm building, intentionally. There is peace in it.
Growth. Autonomy.
I like waking up every day and not having to pour from an emotional cup I'm still refilling. I like doing what I want to do for myself, without explanation or compromise. I like the stillness, the freedom. I am enjoying my singleness because I am still working on some things, and I like having the autonomy to do what I want and only worry about myself. And more than anything, I didn't want to lead him on because I do care about him as a person. That's the part that makes this hard. The history, the laughs, the moments we genuinely connected as friends. But care doesn't equal compatibility. I think as a friend, I can be honest and say that we are not each other's person. And based off the few arguments we've had, it's very telling that it wouldn't work romantically. And that part hurt to say, but it was necessary. Because every time we tried to have deeper conversations, things would fall apart. There were moments when I opened up to him about my past, my fears, the things I've worked hard to overcome. And instead of holding those moments with care, he used them against me in frustration. Threw them back in my face during disagreements. That's not love. That's not safety. I told you before that the type of woman I am right now, or even at the time I told you some of this in person, is not the type of woman I am in a relationship. Because I know how I am when I like someone. But the fact that you threw things I told you back in my face, that I opened up to you about, that you still had no real knowledge of, yeah. I didn't appreciate that at all last time we spoke. That moment, more than anything, solidified things for me. It reminded me that emotional intimacy requires emotional responsibility. And I didn't feel that with him. I don't even believe you can handle the type of woman I am right now, and the woman I am becoming. I'm not the same person you saw last time. And I'm not. I've grown. I've shifted. I've softened in some ways and strengthened in others. I'm becoming more myself than I've ever been, and the kind of love I want moving forward has to meet me at that level. Anything less, I simply don't have the energy for. But I ended it with kindness because I do care about him, even if not in the way he wants. I care about you, though.
Hope you've been well.
Our laughs are contagious. But it's better if we don't cross that line. And that was that.